5. Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, move to return from executive session.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda as written.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Okay, and we are having a public hearing with regard to our 2025 tax budget. And I will open the hearing at this point. And who am I turning to? Vicki?
Yes,
Tammy.
and Tammy's going to present as well, if you want to come up to the podium. Each year, the board is required to consider a budget for the following year before the 15th day of July. It is our tax budget, and this year I'm proud to say that Tammy, as our new Director of Finance, has taken on this task, and she's here to present that proposed budget to you this evening.
Thank you.
So the board does have before them the 2025 tax budget prepared as required by the county auditor. The main purpose of the tax budget is to reflect the need for existing or increased tax levies.
Hey, Tammy, I hate to interrupt, but can you move the microphone over? Yeah.
Sorry.
Fine.
That's fine.
Sorry.
There you go.
No,
You're
don't
good.
worry.
Sorry about that. The main purpose of the tax budget is to reflect the need for existing or increased tax rates and to obtain our share of the local government fund. It also serves as a planning tool. Overall, we are projecting an increase in revenue for 2025 of about 2.5%, with an increase in expenditures of around 4%. Due to a declining road and bridge fund balance, we anticipate shifting various 2025 expenses to the permissive motor vehicle fund in an effort to extend the life of the road and bridge levy. The budget does also reflect a 2025 ending fire fund balance of around $4,410. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Anybody?
No.
No?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that it? No.
Yes, unless there are any questions from the board or the public.
Kevin, you got anything? Okay. Okay, we will close the public hearing. Okay, and we have a resolution. Where is that?
I'd move to adopt a resolution authorizing the approval of the 2025 tax budget.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have the public safety presentation.
Yes. And Tammy and I are going to tag team this one, and Brian as well will jump in here. At the board's last meeting, we presented some information regarding the status of our public safety levy and our public safety finances. And at that time, we talked about the level of services that are provided to our community through the various departments. You can see a graphic on this screen. We employ 72 full-time firefighter, paramedic, EMTs. This past year or so, we have actually hired firefighter EMTs and are in the process of training them to become paramedics, which helped to reduce costs that the township may have, but it also helped us to fill positions because there are fewer and fewer schools that are teaching paramedics licensure. And so we have been able to, again, reduce costs and bring some folks into the fold that we're going to go ahead and train them to be paramedics within the first 5 years of employment with the township. So that helped us we're part of the way back up to staffing. We still have a few positions that are left unfilled at this point. With law enforcement, as the board is aware, we contract with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. We do have a community policing model. Even though it is a county sheriff, we have contracted with the county for more than 5 decades. And over that time, we've built a community policing level where we have crime prevention, community resource, school resource officers, traffic safety, that type of thing. Recently, the school district helped us hire a second school resource officer. The school district pays for the salary of that individual, and the township provides the vehicle through our TIF dollars. But as you can see, the sheriff's office not only covers 17,500 households and 800 businesses, they're also looking at covering the state highways, and we've got 16 miles of riverfront. We do have 35 officers that cover the township. That number has not increased for quite some time. We are not requesting an increase. We are comfortable where we are with 35 officers. And certainly within the fire and rescue department, we have seen a drastic increase in the number of calls, and you're going to see that in the next slide or so here. With fire and rescue, you'll see the bar chart. The blue bars are runs to Anderson Township. The orange is to the village of Newtown. We started contracting with the village of Newtown in 2016. Providing service, not only because it helps supplement the revenue for Anderson Township, it also provides a much better location. We're working out of Station 22, reduces our response time in the northern area of the township. And it also is something that I know residents, not only of this township, but I think we could safely say throughout the state, have always talked about collaboration, working together, and reducing costs. Prior to our venture with the village of Newtown, we were operating out of Station 100, and they had a fire station operating out of their station. So we've combined those two to provide better service to both jurisdictions. The blue line that you see represents the increase in responses just for Anderson Township. So you can see that our responses have drastically increased. Our last public safety levy was in 2016. We were just over 4,000 runs at that time. We're now up over 6,000 responses and continuing to see an increase. And this is primarily due to the fact that our population is aging. A lot more people are aging in place at their homes, and we're certainly seeing that with EMS responses, where a significant number of EMS responses are to our older population. On the right there, you will see our cardiac survival rates. This is data from the Cardiac Arrest Registry to Enhance Survival. It's the CARES program. And it is an entity that collects data from various entities, hospitals, EMS departments, and as you can see, Anderson Township has a huge success rate there. It's certainly not 100%, which is where we would all love it to be, but the survival rates for non-traumatic cardiac events in Anderson Township Fire and Rescue is delivering 22.6% as opposed to, or 60%, versus the national and state average, we're well above both. On the law enforcement side, the Hamilton County Communications Center, the total number of dispatches through 2023 is just over 15,500. You can imagine 35 officers, the number of responses that each one of those makes. We had an significant increase prior to COVID in 2019, then we dipped a little bit, mainly because of COVID. Fewer people on the street, fewer people out in the public, but we're starting to see those numbers increase again. The most common calls that the Sheriff's Office responds to are listed on the right. That's from 2016 through 2023. So you can see the variety of calls. It's everything from injured folks to people calling us because they see a suspicious vehicle or a person in their neighborhood, which we want people to do. Domestic trouble, things like lockout assist. We have a lot of calls where people lock lose their keys or lock themselves out of their home. The psychiatric emergency is a number that we are tracking because we are seeing increases there as well. And things like debris in the roads. With construction, there's often debris in the road, and the sheriff's office is the one that enforces that. The status of our budget currently, and fire and rescue and sheriff's services are lumped into the public safety levy. So you can see that our last levy was in 2016, which follows an 8-year adoption cycle. We have been able to stretch levies. In 2000, we predicted our levy would last for 5 years. We were able to stretch it through 2008. But due to the effective millage that continues, and Tammy will explain a little bit more about that, we are seeing a decline in the revenue that the township receives because of the state law, which again she'll go into. Since 2016, one of the things that we've been very successful at is utilizing our TIF revenue. Our 1994 TIF, which is the largest source of TIF revenue that we have, we went to the legislature and were able to get authorization to allow us to use the 94 TIF revenue to maintain items that were purchased with the 94 TIF revenue. So for example, when we purchase a fire engine, which each tire has to be replaced every year at a cost of $1,000 per tire. Ambulances, if there are repairs that need to be made, a transmission that blows up. If we bought that vehicle with 94 TIF dollars, we can use the 94 TIF dollars to do those repairs, and we do. And the same is true with the sheriff's cruisers that we own, that were bought with those dollars. We buy turnout gear, the firefighters' turnout gear, which each set is, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 a set. Each firefighter has 2 sets of turnout gear for safety purposes. Things like our radios and the Lucas devices. The Lucas devices are the uninterrupted chest compression devices that were helpful in getting those survival rates with cardiac, because it delivers uninterrupted compression once it is put on. When you have firefighters or other people that are administering CPR, there's a changeover when somebody gets tired and you have to switch them out. With Lucas devices, they keep going, and these were purchased using the TIF dollars. So all of those items, things like a fire engine, years ago we paid maybe $500,000 for a fire engine. Well, now they're costing well over $1 million. If we didn't have those 94 TIF dollars, that would be coming out of the public safety levy. So we have been able to stretch our levy dollars utilizing the TIF fund. I'm going to ask Tammy to come up now. She's going to go over some of the financial information in more detail.
So what is the financial impact of new development on public safety services? While new development increases the demand for services, it does not necessarily increase the operating revenue needed to provide those services. New growth generating TIF revenue helps stretch levy dollars, but is restricted in use and cannot be used for the largest expense, which is salaries and benefits. And many healthcare facilities located within the township utilize safety services but generate no tax revenue due to exemptions. Public safety grants help to offset the cost of purchasing certain equipments and are pursued as opportunities arise. The reduction factors, reduction factors keep levy revenue at approximately the same level regardless of increased property values from reappraisals. A levy approved by voters 8 years ago is generating about the same amount today. To keep up with increased expenses, it is necessary for taxing entities to seek new levies. Here you can see the steady revenue stream and the fluctuating expenditures over the last 7 years. In 2023, expenses exceeded revenue, which began cutting into the fund balance. In 2024, expenditures are expected to exceed revenue by about 20%. This trend is projected to continue through 2029, resulting in an operating budget deficit each year ranging from about $4.6 million in 2026 to about $7.5 million in 2029. On this slide, the bar reflects expenditures with the 3 lines showing revenue projections with each of the 3 proposed levy millages. Expenditures begin to exceed revenue in 2028, at which point the fund balance will start to diminish. Are there any questions?
Yep, and Tammy, just to tag on to one of the points you made about tax exempt facilities, you know, we've certainly seen some investment here from the medical community with Mercy, with their patient tower, Tri-Health, Christ, those others. They're nonprofits. So our revenue has not increased. In fact, in some cases, when they've acquired new property, it's decreased. And we are working to pull together those numbers so that we have that information for the board.
There's questions out there about the number of senior living facilities that, and I want to set it straight or make sure we're all speaking the same language here in terms of increased runs to those facilities are part of the problem. And so tagging on to your point about who's paying their fair share, can we give a little bit of an example of, for instance, one of the newer, like Anthology or Harmony, they're paying their portion of real estate tax, and I'm assuming it's quite large based on the TIF revenue that just comes off of Anthology. But to your point, Christ Hospital, which was a privately owned building, is now owned by Christ, and we lost $300,000 a year in tax, I mean, whatever that number was.
It's 300.
On one building.
Yes,
on
annual.
one property.
Correct.
Yes.
But can you, or maybe Chief, you talk about that just a little bit about that it's not, they're not, those new facilities that are for-profit aren't the problem.
That's correct. Have we seen an increase in responses? I would say yes, and I'll defer to the chief on that. But with Anthology, which is now the Ashton, the revenue that we receive from that, the TIF revenue, is what it funded the renovations of the Recplex at Beach Acres. We do receive TIF revenue from that. We receive TIF revenue from Harmony down on Clough Pike. Those TIF dollars are being utilized to fund improvements along Clough Pike as far as traffic safety and some other improvements there. One of the biggest users of our services has been in place for a long time, and that's the New England Club. We make a fair amount of runs there. We also have a fair amount of responses to Forest Hills Care Center, which is also paying TIF revenue. But Rick, I don't know if you want to comment on.
One of the things that
Could
people
you
understand is
Could you
that
come up to the mic so we can get it
'Cause
recorded?
I want to make sure that it's recorded.
You know, in our last couple presentations relative to the board, you know, we do make more runs to people as they get older. One of the things that wasn't represented in there was with Anderson Mercy being here, that attracts a lot of doctors' offices that are in these buildings owned by the hospitals for nonprofits. We make a lot of runs. I can't give you a hard number, but we make a considerable amount of runs to individuals that go to those doctor's offices, and the doctor decides it's a big enough emergency where they call 911. That is not uncommon at all. And it increases as we get more and more of those doctor's offices within the area. We do make runs to the facilities that have the larger populations of older individuals, and I can get you those numbers so that we're looking at facts as opposed to guesses. But many people don't realize, when a lot of people think, well, there's a doctor's office, they take care of the situation. If there's anything that's slightly out of the scope of that doctor, they call 911. And I can get you those numbers for the future as well.
And I think, Rick, one of the points we were talking about internally, and you just mentioned it, with some of these places like Harmony or Anthology or some of the others, you have a large concentration. You have in some cases, 100 or more people in that facility. And so you've got more people concentrated in one area. We're going to make more responses just because of the number of people there. But we do have a lot of older adults who are aging in place. So they don't have a nurse or a caregiver right down the hall. So we may make 2 or 3 or 4 runs to somebody's residence to care for them, where maybe if we're going to, Forest Hills Care Center, we're making 1 run to that one particular individual because, it's a one-off kind of situation. Is that accurate?
That's very true. One of the biggest things that EMS and just healthcare in general is facing are individuals who want to stay home, who want to age at home, but don't realize when they're not capable of doing it themselves. And what that typically results in is many runs over a relatively condensed period of time until either a family member or the individual comes to the realization that they do need more than their spouse or someone that stops in on a weekly basis. That's a big concern. Actually, that's the genesis of many departments starting community paramedicine programs, where they're trying to get people to recognize this need before an acute situation arises, before they collapse, before they fall. We try and remove things that would make them trip. We try and help make sure they take their medication every day. We actually are just dipping our toe in that. We're dealing with 2 individuals. We had a list of our top 18 or 19 individuals, and I believe only 3 or 4 of them were in facilities, the elderly facilities. The vast majority were people at home. So we're trying to pick these people out that we can maybe deal with and address and get them additional help from the community services, Council on Aging or other agencies that might be able to help alleviate and maybe even defer or eliminate the potential acute situation where 911 is needed.
Thank you, Rick. And I just will say, I think that's the piece too that isn't really, the dots are not always connected as far as when, that there is a lot more follow-up and then preventative care in these facilities and safeguards there. So when they have an incident, I'm sure they're having an incident report, there's follow-up on safety. So there is a cycle of where those should be decreasing for a particular patient or an individual living there versus, to your point, someone that is aging in place at home, there are incidents escalating, and that is going to cause increased runs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, I don't have all those numbers, but for example, the building at the top of the hill, the Tri-Health facility, I think in 2023, Rick, we made about 90 to 95 responses to that from the comm center dispatches. That's a tremendous amount of responses to a facility that no longer pays property taxes.
It doesn't.
Pardon me?
Doesn't-
It does
they don't-
not. It's nonprofit. Yeah. And then conversely, when you look at the new, particularly senior housing developments, we used to use the rule of thumb. About 30,000 a year was the tax per million. 30,000 per million was paid in taxes. The school district got 17 or so. We got 13. So you multiply that out on a valuation of $14 million. That's a sizable amount of taxes that they're paying. That's feeding into the TIF. It can't be used for the levy, but it can be used for apparatus and all those things that stretch the dollar. New growth stretches and it basically stretches out the tax burden on residents from that. So existing residents benefit from some of that new development as well.
Right. Okay.
So unless the board has any other questions, there is, if the board chooses to adopt a resolution to place a public safety levy on the ballot this November, that decision has to be made by July 18th. The board at a previous meeting had authorized obtaining information from the Hamilton County Auditor's Office to certify the amounts that each different millage would bring to the township. The 3 mills selections were 3.15 mills, 3.30 mills, and 3.50 mills. There are 3, and you can see the lines on that graph that kind of show you where our finances would be with those different millages. Again, unless there are any questions, there are 3 resolutions before you, and we would ask that the board consider a resolution to place a levy on the ballot this fall at the millage of your choosing.
Well, I mean, and I'll let you guys chime in too, but I mean, there's no doubt we're gonna consider it. I mean, we've been considering this now, knowing that this was coming for some time. I think we still, I mean, at least I still have a few other questions that I want to get some answers to. One of the things, and maybe Rick, this is back to you again, but everyone hears in general, well, expenses are going up, expenses are going up. And I'm looking at a $5 million gap next year between the revenue we take in, which is just under 17 million for fire and sheriff, and expenses that are just under 21 million. So call it a $5 million gap. Why is that? You know, what is driving our expenses specifically, and what have we done to try and curb any of that if we can? I know a lot of it's personnel. We have to hire people, we have to pay them well, we're, you know, they're union, so we've got to, you know, work in contract with all that. But are there specific things or things that we can address that we have done?
Well, I mean, just on that point, I mean, you know better, but like we did have to give raises, what, a year ago? I don't, because we weren't able to hire people. Remember that? I mean, we had to give raises to bring us up because people were going other places. It's very competitive in this market. Trying to get firefighters, it's very competitive. So you have to pay what those around you are paying, and we were low, so we had to make a raise. And so there's part of it right there.
And indeed, to that point too, my understanding was, and for those of you that don't know me, my background is healthcare, and I am by trade a nurse, but I've worked in nursing leadership. My understanding that especially in the EMS paramedic world, it's the number of staff you have at a time which impacts your retention, and it just kind of snowballs. So I understood, and Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, that the other thing besides just money is if there's not enough paramedics or firefighters, they know they're going to be working overtime, and that is a huge sell as far as not being able to get and retain EMS personnel. And so then when I look at our survival data, that's what I'm looking at and concerned with is, okay, we're juxtaposing here cutting costs, and we want to make sure that we're delivering excellence, because this is our residents' lives, and that we have a desirable place enough to work so that we can get and retain these paramedics. So, yeah.
If I could jump in, and Rick, I'll let you finish, but just for the public, I know the board knows this, but we have 4 fire stations over 31 square miles. And 4 fire stations are strategically placed. And a lot of folks over the years have said, oh, you've got personnel sitting in the station. That doesn't happen because they're usually out on responses. They're out on calls. And so we may get 2 or 3 calls that come in within a short period of time. We've got 17 minimum manning. So those personnel, we've got 2 on an engine, 2 on an ambulance, and he can explain why we do that. But we've got those folks. If somebody calls off sick, we've got vacations we have to get in. When we have fewer personnel, that impacts response time. And the Beachmont Avenue Fire Station is our busiest fire station. They're making, 7, 8 calls a day? Average about 9 a day for 4 personnel. And the fact that it's not only the 123 miles of subdivision streets and the 70 miles of county roadways, we also cover the interstates. We cover major entertainment venues like Riverbend, where we're trying to get a community event fee to help offset some of the costs. We cover all these different healthcare facilities that we've talked about before. And it's not just the 44,000 residents that live here and the 2,700 that live in the village of Newtown. It's when we have population increases because people come here for various activities or events, whether that's Park District, soccer game, or whatever the case may be. So the amount of responses that we have are increasing, and that is what we're concerned about, is being able to maintain those response times that we have to get to those patients that are in need. with the personnel that we have. Like I said, on the sheriff's side, we have not had any increases on the sheriff's side. We've talked a number of times, I've talked to Lieutenant Downing and others. We don't see a need to increase that. We're not asking for an increase there. It's on the fire side and it's being driven by the EMS runs. And Rick, if you want to come back up and.
So relative to the responses throughout the township, we do have 17 minimum per day. And in the summertime, people wanting to be off in the summer, we are running 17 a day. And sometimes it takes, because of injuries and the number of vacation days we need to give, we are running at that 17. You know, the fire department is a creature of the collective bargaining agreement. And not unlike any other organized group of individuals, people want more time off and they want more pay. And the world today, the fire world, is not the same as it was 8 or 10 or 15 years ago. When, and I'm going back much farther than that, but when I got on, there was 21 people going for one spot we had hired one time in 4 years. Nowadays, there's a lot more job positions than there are individuals to fill them, which is why we have fallen back to EMTs. And we give the incentive that if you come work for us, you're an EMT, you become a paramedic within 5 years, we pay for it. Every department in this area is running short. The Cincinnati Fire Department, I believe, is 80 to 100 people below what they want to be at. So, but they've got a staff of 850. But, you know, I have a chief meeting once a month with the entire group of Hamilton County chiefs. I have another meeting every month with the east side from about Norwood over. And we always ask the same question every meeting: how many people are at full staff? We rarely have anybody raise a hand. Everybody's down 2, 3, and those are people that have 25 and 30 people on their department. You know, we have 72 spots, and we need 4 that we're trying to fill, which I would love to fill, and hopefully after the end of the year we'll be able to facilitate at least 3 of those right away. But it's basically a situation where individuals now can contract shop. They line up the contracts, and it depends, you know, how much time's off. We've got Kelly days that are running, basically running the show now, the time off. It seems today, 10 years ago, people were more interested in their income, taking home money. The new employees now don't worry as much about the income, although that is an aspect. They want more time off. So, you know, it's one of those things, if we want to fill these spots, we have to be competitive with the myriad of other departments that are offering differences in their contracts to try and attract those people. And that's not only attracting them, but it's keeping them. You know, we had one person leave that went to the city of Cincinnati because they have 3-week Kelly days. That's 21 days off above and beyond a vacation days. You know, we can't match that. If we did that, we would never be able to come. In order to keep 21 people, I'd have to hire 15 or 20 people, and that's no exaggeration. So, you know, we're doing the best we can with the people we have. We're really trying to attract. We're trying lateral hires, which means we're offering seasoned veterans of other departments to come in at higher levels instead of the basic starting pay. That's how we got the 3 people that we've recently just hired. And we're participating in mock interviews with Great Oaks. We go in and we get the first shot, the first blush of the new people coming into the field, and we give them a copy of our contract or our benefits page, and you know, we try and lure them in right away. And there are some departments that make offers at that event. We don't go that far because we have a process we have to put people through, but we try and attract them. And you know, I've been really leaning on our union to get out there and spread the word amongst, you know, other individuals. Now, sometimes it's difficult because when they go to meetings with other union officials, but through friends and acquaintances and schools and trainings, we're trying to get them attracted, you know, to Anderson Township.
But is it fair to say that we have to hire more people to provide the level of service that, I mean, our survival rates, our response times are probably two of the biggest indicators of the level of service we provide, which is obviously good, great. But because of all of the benefits or whatever that they're seeking, we have to basically hire more guys.
Yes,
People.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where if it's in this world, if especially once they get older and they get a few years on, to get 8 or 10 years, they're kind of locked into the system, you know. But the new individuals, where they don't have the vacation, they don't have everything built up through an employer, it's very open to go to another department without any loss to them. And if that happens, we are, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Then we're just trying to fill those spots. But Mr. Girth, to your point, in order to stay competitive, those rates or the saves that we get, the thinking outside of the parameter of the protocol are by individuals who are ahead of the curve. They're smarter than the average firefighter. They're more aggressive than the average firefighter. And if you want those people, the people in high demand, you got to pay for them.
Yeah.
You have to make the job attractive to them. It's just competition.
And if I could clarify, we are not if the board approves a public safety levy and the voters approve a public safety levy, it will not fund any new additional personnel. We are not asking for new personnel at this time. The board had increased from 69 to 72, correct? So we are not asking for new personnel with this proposed levy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is that, because we think that's the number that we need? I mean,
Yes.
Is that where we are today?
With this contract, yes.
Yes.
And we've actually gone from 66 to 72.
60, sorry,
We had
yes.
one BC who's a 40-hour to help cover our EMS, and that's one of the leading causes we're at that rate right now. Because this individual is a stickler for points. He goes over every EMS run. If there's something our guys could have done, they're reminded of that, or we have classes about it. And then we've had 6 individuals that have been added to the 24-48 ranks, every third day shifts. And, you know, to the point of getting 17 people, if nobody takes the overtime voluntarily, we mandate overtime. And when you start doing that too much, that hurts the morale, that makes them tired, that makes them less sharp, maybe less safe. You know, it's a rolling ball. It just collects issues as it goes.
Right, and just a couple more points, if I may. With the battalion chief that's in charge of EMS, that started after COVID because of the significant increase, and that individual is also reaching out to these home healthcare agencies, trying to help them reduce the number of responses. I also want to point out we spent a lot of time talking about personnel, and labor costs certainly are the largest part of the fire and rescue department budget. But we, like the public, like, you know, my grocery bill, like everybody else, we have seen increases, the cost of fuel, the cost of medications, the supplies, technology. We've certainly seen an increase in cost in technology for the law enforcement, where we're talking about body-worn cameras, and we're talking about different types of technology in the cruisers, where we've seen the costs increase as well, and of course training. All of the training that our personnel go through, that cost cannot be taken out of TIF. All of those costs come out of the public safety levy. So,
Real quick, what is our average run time? Do we have an average that we?
I believe it's in the 4 to 5 minute range, and that's throughout the township. You know, we have longer distances, the bottom of 8 Mile, say at Kellogg. You know, that if we make a run there, that artificially makes it look longer than the majority of runs that we have along the more populated areas, like Beachmont, you know, and Sutton and Salem and places like that. But I can get that information for you.
No, I'm just asking, because I've been on the end of a few run calls at my home, and it's just, when you're sitting there waiting, that 4 or 5 minutes is the longest 4 or 5 minutes of your life. And I know that's what our residents expect, are those quick run times, which is why we have increased our personnel. You know,
Yep.
so I just want, that's a really important thing. Our run times are good. You know, we're not you know, typically waiting 15, 20 minutes just for someone to get there. So, I don't know, I just,
And to that point, once we get fully staffed, if we can get these 4 people on and we get some of our injuries back to work, we are really trying to staff Medic 206. That is my ultimate goal, because half of our responses come out of Station 6. So when that medic and engine head off to a first run, we have to move a medic unit up from another station into that house, because there's a 50-50 chance the next call is going to come out of that district. So if we can man Medic 206, you know, we're saving fuel, we're saving time, we're leaving that medic unit with the engine. When that medic unit leaves that other district, we still have an engine with 2 paramedics and all the equipment they need. But it would be nice to be able to not have to move people around. That's a lot of wear and tear and a lot of fuel that we're forced to do right now, you know, until we can get that Medic 206 staffed on a permanent basis.
Does the board have any other questions?
I guess to finish back to my question of, we've got a $5 million gap. It sounds like what you just said is that out of all those expenses, there's really, you can't cut fuel, you can't cut personnel. Those are fixed realities, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because again, the question we're going to get is, what have you done? You're increasing my taxes, and yes, it's for, I would argue, foundational services that we provide. But what have you done to offset that increase? And we need to be able to tell people what it is. And we don't control fuel. We can't control the number of people that call, but the things that we can control, you know, we just need to make sure that we tell that story.
Well, I think traditionally our payroll, our people cost us somewhere in the 83 to 85% of what we spend.
So the majority of that's payroll.
Yeah. And that's CBA driven and driven by competition.
And
you know,
by our runs, and that's gone up, I think, by 30%. So that is the other piece to the puzzle, is that the age demographics are changing. And and then Josh, I'm sorry, I'll get back to you if you were still going. I had a question too, because I'm looking at this and I look at the fact that, so my term started in 2022. And I've thought about this almost the whole time. It's come up in different ways because we've talked about cutting costs without impacting services and leaving no stone unturned and thinking outside the box. So by having EMTs, by using TIF dollars, strategic use of those dollars when there is a development. It is a good story to me because there has been conservative spending. The levy here we are in 2024, but from the last in 2016. On the flip side of it, the story to tell across the community is people are strapped. People feel that their taxes cannot increase by 1 penny. And so this is being weighed heavily in. When I look at these amounts in light of that, those are the conversations that I have with people in the community about different things: gas, their mortgage, their rent, insurance costs, that the tax burden is killing them. And I'm really trying to figure out how we can deliver this level of service with a minimal impact. And it looks as though the demographics in our community, we do need to be able to physically get to people in an emergency. And so I'm seeing here different levels of emergency. So cardiac events, but falls. And a fall, when the response time goes from 4 to 8 minutes, can turn, especially if you've broken a bone, a large bone, into a lethal event. So this is what's juxtaposed for us. My question is about those amounts. I'm looking at the lowest amount. I don't know if Brian, if you need to weigh in. That 3.15, it doesn't really seem to be a viable amount to me if we're projecting this should at least last. I mean, we're not looking to get 6, 7 years when current community members are saying we can't take it anymore. So I don't know that that's the goalpost of trying to get as long as we can. We don't know what the economy is going to be, even maybe at the end of this year. Is that really an option?
And I think it's important how we came up with those. I mean, those numbers are, basically generate the gap that we're, is that a fair statement?
It is and we were aiming for at least 5 years, which is what we've always tried to do. You know, knowing that moving out too far from there, you end up, you know, doing your best to guesstimate what the expenses are going to be. And, you know, certainly one of the things, we always look for ways to cut costs. We just do. We don't wait until we get into a budget crisis and then try to figure it out. And so that will be a continuing effort over this next period. But we looked at what we did the last time in 2016. We asked and the voters approved a 3.55 mil levy. So we tried to keep that in mind. We know the financial situation that everyone is in and tried to go as low as we could. And that's what we've presented.
Mm-hmm. So, not on this chart, but in our packet, 3.3 is $6,066,000 a year, right? Those levers are in here.
If you're looking at the county auditor's certification, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
And Tammy had pointed this out at the last meeting, that we can count on receiving about 97% of that because some taxes go into default, some people don't pay, those kinds of things.
So without trying, what are the numbers? Do you
Okay.
have those numbers?
Here, Margaret.
Because I'm looking at the one and then I have to scroll.
3.15 mils generates 5.8 million, again, subject to collections.
3.15, 5 point,
Wait, I'm sorry, that was the first one?
yeah, that's the lowest.
3.15 mils is 5.8 million annually.
Uh-huh,
3.30 mils is 6.06 million annually, rounded.
right.
3.5 mils is 6.43 million annually.
And these are all based, everything's based on the new valuations of our,
Yes.
the new property values.
Yes.
It's based, and the auditor's careful to say it in her certification, correct me if you need to, that it's based on the current tax base, and it assumes that it stays constant for
For the life of the levy.
Yeah.
Right.
But see, that's also part of the problem with these things, because it's, the language is, I don't know why it has to be so confusing. Because
language
in the auditor's statement, so the resolutions where it says that, you know, our residents are gonna be taxed, $1 of,
that's statutory.
okay.
They give, and it's required, actually.
So what's funny is, statutory or not, so the average cost between the three, take the middle one, is $116 for each $100,000 of Hamilton County Auditor's appraised value. Well, what is that? Because if you go to the Hamilton County Auditor's site, there's market value and there's assessed value.
Right.
Not one place does it say appraised value. And that's what's very frustrating about these things. And so again, when we're telling people, when we decide, if we decide what we're going to do, whether it's tonight or next couple of weeks, we need to be very clear to people what they should expect.
What is that
And
dollar
this is
amount?
not very
Yeah.
clear. And I'm not blaming you guys, I'm blaming the process here.
And it's interesting that that statutory language actually has changed since 2016, when we last did this.
Oh, it has?
Yeah, I mean, it's intended to mean the same thing it meant in 2016, but they changed the way they said it. They also went from $100 of value to $100,000 value. So, since 2015, when we were looking at it for 2016.
Okay, well, do you have any more questions for Rick?
Sorry, Rick. No.
Well, it's
you.
okay. In
Thank
case,
you.
Thank you.
no problem.
No, it's been
And
thorough.
I live in Anderson. I'm a taxpayer and property owner. I feel it. You know, I know, you know, and I'm more than willing to talk to any organization, any individual, whether it's one-on-one, 1 to 100, and explain to them what we have done. I can give them the facts of where we're at and where we're going and what we've done to save them the money up to this point. Because a lot of people don't know, you know, unless they watch something like this. But we can explain it to them and get that word out.
Well, bottom line, one of the basic things we do as a township is fire and safety. And that's what we do. That is our job. That's
Health
what
and
we
public
provide.
safety, it's a
Right.
direct impact, indicator of our community's quality of life.
Mhm.
And so you can have all the fancy bells and whistles, but if we can't get to somebody when they can't breathe, then, you know, what's it good for, right? So it's front of mind for, I think, everybody at this table.
Okay, thank you. If you ever have any questions, don't feel free to call me or send somebody to me. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick.
Well, I mean, it's no doubt it's front of mind, but I have also, I talked to Vicki earlier today about getting some, and Brian, about getting some projections on revenue and some other things that I haven't had time to review. I know, you know, the deadline to do something is coming up on us fast, so I'm cognizant of that, but I also have a few other things that I would like to consider, because this is a big decision, and so I'm not sure I'm ready to vote on this tonight. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but.
I guess for me, I would, and I know I mentioned this, and I think this graph is a good picture of that, but I kind of wanted to get more into, have we looked at where we would be at as far as like a staffing model, like some hard numbers of without the levy? So that do we have any, could we use our data to say, look, when we had this number of runs and this number of employees, if we increase that number of runs by another 10% with the number of staff, I don't know, do we have any numbers to show, okay, number one, what if the levy, it's put on the ballot and it doesn't pass? But what kind of a picture of being prepared and looking at the level of service we can provide just today as it is, because that is a question that I do think community members are asking, and I don't really know hard numbers about that.
And do we still have the slide that shows what the general fund, the COVID money, the TIF, it's not in this slide.
Was that the last presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, and I don't know, Steve, if the prior presentation is on that thumb drive as well. If you could pull that up.
But if you look at that one, the one that says public safety projections, including additional levy, the one with the 3 lines with the revenue, and then that one. So, like, we know the projected revenue, that's pretty, I mean, it's projected, but those are pretty good numbers.
Right.
The expenditures, the farther you go out, the harder it is to predict those. So I think we've been conservative on, Tammy's been conservative in, you know, giving what we think 28, 29 could be. Maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it's worse. It's hard to see. It's hard to say, and it's hard to plan over the 5 years when you need to. The revenues are going to stay constant, so you need to collect more in those first few years to offset when you're going to be upside down after that.
So because we've been so conservative, my first gut reaction is, well, then we're going to ask for the lowest amount possible. But maybe that's not the smart thing to ask for in terms of stretching the levies. And are we doing a disservice by asking for the lowest amount, or if voters approve the lowest amount, but then we get to the end of our rope quicker versus doing a higher? Now, it's not that much different, but it's $800,000 a year different. I mean, so those are some of the questions that I want to have a little more discussion on, just because I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, balancing that conservative approach to, and just saying we're going to do the lowest amount possible versus being more thoughtful on our planning and saying, well, if we do a little bit higher, maybe we don't have to come back to the voters as quick. And I don't feel like we have that answer right now.
And the TIF money is there. but that's for capital, so.
It is, but you know,
But, yeah.
I mean,
know
here's,
where you're
here's the
going,
thing,
yeah.
and this is another reason why my
Yeah.
gut is to say, let's go as low as possible, and can we go even lower than 3? And that's because, well, what if we change? What if the statute changes? What if the laws change? What if we're able to tap into some of that money and use it? I mean, that would change things.
But again, yes, it would. If we couldn't go to the legislature and have them say, you can use TIF money for X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But again, that's not up to us, yes. And
It's not up to
We have worked
us.
on that in the past, though. That's why now we can pay for whatever we can pay, the fire engines and things out of TIF money. When did that come in?
If I remember correctly, it was like 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, so that's only been since the last levy. That is things that we worked on. I know you personally worked on that. It's making it so we can use our TIF funds to pay some of our expenses. And we will keep doing that. That is, you know, Josh is very good at that. We will keep going to the legislature and asking for those things that we can use the TIF. But there's no guarantee. They may say, no, you're not going to, we don't care. We don't, you know.
I mean, the school district has the same problem, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
you know, there should be a better way to fund the schools than what's happening, but the state law has it all. I mean,
Well, and I think for me, what the dilemma is that a lot can happen in 3 years. So where people were 3 years ago is totally different than where they are today. And so that's where I'm torn between, is looking at longevity or helping people get a reprieve today with getting what they need today. Because I know a lot of Americans, a lot of people in this community 3 years ago didn't have the exact same concerns, or their lifestyle was totally different. So that's, for me, that's what I'm torn between, is going out for amount that lasts, or giving people the reprieve today. And we don't know what the economy is going to do in 3 years. We don't know what it's going to look like after the election this fall. So that it's a big decision as far as that, because you do have people today saying they can't do it.
Right, and that's true. And, you know, on the conservative side of the estimates as well, I mean, the sheriff's office contract negotiations are still ongoing, correct, as far as their collective bargaining unit? Because I do want to point out that
Okay.
sheriff's deputies also are unionized. Those negotiations are still ongoing. Looking at the historical data on that, we took a conservative approach there. Please don't tell the law enforcement officers, but anyway, we took a conservative approach there. We also realize in fire
But
and rescue that we have, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We have a lot of folks that are getting near retirement. And so when you have people that are at the higher ranks in an organization that is structured the way fire and rescue is, when those folks retire, there is a chance that our costs will go down a little bit, because we're bringing in, you know, new people, and all of those things have kind of been in the back of our mind as we're looking forward this, that what can we do with legislation? What can we do to cut additional costs? You know, you've heard Rick and I talk before, we're having issues with our EMS billing company. We are looking at changing up our EMS billing. We are looking at the community host fee, whatever we can do to increase revenue. But the bottom line is the way our funding is structured, it's property taxes.
yeah.
Right, which gets back into,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No.
to interrupt you, but we were talking about the sheriff's office. I sit on the sheriff's advisory committee. They're having the exact same struggles. They're all constantly looking for people, constantly. It's a struggle. And, you know, you have to start paying more. So I don't know that we should be so conservative, because I don't have privy to any information, but they're fighting with other departments too to find people. So it's
It's
a problem
across the board.
throughout. Every community is facing the same problem. So,
And you
go ahead.
can use general fund money, but you also don't want to put the general fund in the bind, because that's the fund that funds
Well, we were in that bind
over. Yeah.
6 years ago, whenever, and.
when I
we were
first got
wor-
on,
Yeah,
we were
I mean,
worried, very worried.
And can you imagine, I mean,
Yeah.
if we tried to
Yeah.
go out for a general fund levy, people would say, no way, and I mean, I get it, but we were in that bind
Yeah,
before.
we were.
And we got out of it.
But-
Yeah,
But the TIF stuff does go back to the point that was made earlier about the, and I love having Mercy Hospital in this community and all these, but again, that we run on property taxes. We don't get income tax from any of the, we just don't. It's a township. So that's what people have to understand. It's like, yeah, that's a lot of employees, but, they don't pay taxes to us.
And we don't get more money as time goes along. So that number, that amount has stayed constant, but nothing else has stayed constant, the price of anything.
The irony is that we make all these runs to Tri-Health and Christ and they don't, they're one of our biggest users and they don't pay a dime of property taxes. That there is the problem. I'm gonna guess, Steve, and I know you had that chart at one point, non-tax paying properties, if they were paying their fair share, we'd be talking millions. And we probably wouldn't be, we'd probably still be sitting here and have to have a conversation, but it would probably be a much less amount. And I realize that as a nonprofit, that's the benefit they enjoy, but it's kind of bullcrap. And in times like this, you really start to see that when, again, not to bash Christ or Tri-Health, but those two buildings alone, $500,000 in tax, gone.
They purchased a corner at 5 Mile Beachmont and the
Yeah.
Anderson Town Center and the Christ property. So, yeah, and the efforts that we've had collectively to diversify our tax base that have been working towards that only have those rugs pulled out from underneath you. We've done everything right to try to stretch the burden to the residents.
All right, well, we
There's a
could
few
talk about this for another
nonprofits
2
here that-
hours. So
yeah.
I have some other revenue questions and some things that I would like to go through.
Okay,
So
well, we
I don't-
can hold off on the vote. I hear that's what you're saying. You want to take more time to look at this.
But I know we're gonna have to
Yeah,
probably,
well, we gotta do it with.
we're gonna have to get together for
Well,
a
July
special
18th,
meeting
so
or
we'll
something.
probably have to call a special
That's
meeting
Mhm.
and decide on which of these levels or something that we want to do.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
So since we did cancel the interim workshop meeting because it was on July 4th, would the board like to schedule a special meeting prior to July 18th?
I think we probably need to,
Yeah.
because I think even after today.
July 18th is that our meeting date?
yeah.
That's when
Yes.
but that's when it has to be sent.
Yes. We have to have a vote that day so we can meet the 90-day requirement to get it to the Board of Elections.
Yeah, I'm fine with getting
But
together.
you think we need to do it before then, or is that?
July 18th is the date that Margaret and I came up with when we did the schedule. That was the last board meeting. We could probably push it to,
Which would be August 7th.
Okay.
So I guess if we could do it at that meeting, is that?
you could do it at that meeting, July 18th. You could make that decision. My question to you is, do you want to have a special meeting, similar to a workshop meeting, prior to July 18th, so you can get answers to your questions, and then you can vote on July 18th? It'll give you an additional time period.
Yes, definitely, because I want to be able to have more discussion about it, like we're having now.
Okay, and if I could, if the board has questions, that you could let me
Mhm.
know so we can start working. I've jotted down a number of those, but if there are other pieces of data that would be helpful to you, we'll pull that together and make sure we have all that. And similarly, like I said at the last meeting, we know you're getting questions from the public already, and we are working on a frequently asked question list to kind of address the questions from the public as well and provide answers. So if you hear anything from the public, or if the public has any questions, let me know, and we'll make sure we add it to that list.
And EMS billing was one of those, so
Yes,
I'm glad
okay.
you brought that up, because that is also stuff I've heard.
Okay.
Well, good. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
of you for your information. I know a lot of work
And also
went
for
into
putting
this.
everything out in insights as we've been discussing and getting new information. I do, and that is what's generating the questions, which is good. That's what we.
Well, that's another reason why I want to do this, have another discussion, so that if we, any information we put out
Yeah,
can be included in
Could-
that.
Well, any
Exactly.
information generates more questions.
exactly.
So we need the chance to answer those. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, okay, so we're moving on. Public forum. Individuals who wish to address the board should state their name and address for the record, make their points as clearly and concisely as possible, and limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes, which may not be shared with or yielded to others. All comments shall be directed to the Board of Township Trustees. Kevin?
I'm sure you're totally shocked. Kevin Mishak, 8433 Holiday Hills Drive. Thank you. Thank you for postponing the vote on this levy till July 18th. There is not enough information in this community about this issue to cram a tax increase in November down our throats. All right? I understand July 18th is the deadline for the November election. There's an election every 6 months. All right? Timing of the tax levy is an important part of this process, informing the taxpayer of what they're getting out of it. This is the first time I figured out it was actually going to be just for public safety. That's a great, we love that here in Anderson Township. We love our police and fire department. We hate taxes, all right? So this is going to be a really contentious election this fall. There's a lot going on. I also know about some other levies that are going to be put on this ballot this fall, all right? So do I think doing a levy this fall is a great idea? No. Do I think the levy is necessary? Yes. I think the levy is necessary. I think you can make your case, but I don't think the township has made that case. All right? I don't think foregoing 6 months worth of taxes towards the general fund, because I hear that there's some structural issues that should be addressed. I think there's some more information that the township needs to share to the board and to the residents upon this issue. Last month when I attended this meeting, I thought this was going to be an additional tax levy for the general fund for Anderson Township. 30 days later, it's public safety, all right? So that was a bit of a surprise to me, you know, and I think I'm as informed as anybody else besides the people that actually work here. John Q. Public, thank you very much. So I think there's more information that needs to be shared. Secondly, you need to go as low as possible, all right? In bad times, don't tell me you need more money. In good times, in 2-3 years, when things pick up, ask for more money. If you got to come back in 2 or 3 years and say you need a little bit more for the chief and for the sheriff, hey, I'll be happy to talk on your side. This fall, I don't want to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Thank you. We've closed public forum. Trustee comments. I have one comment, just because, just how levies work. Like, what we vote on in November, we will get in start getting in 2025. If we voted on something next March, for instance, when there's another, we wouldn't get that revenue till 2026. Right. So that's.
I'm glad, thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. I don't really have anything except for the Independence Day parade, so, and I had it written down on a sticky note what time it starts, and the road will be cleared, but I can't find it, so.
Well, and there's a run this year too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
That Steve's block, there's the run, which the Beachmont Bolt, we had a run last year, but this is a bigger run, I think, and actually, we're not having to organize that this year. Steve, who's organizing that? I think it's Anderson and Turpin Boosters.
Anderson Boosters.
Yes, yeah.
Anderson Boosters.
And Turpin's cross country.
Yeah, so, if anybody's interested in running up Beachmont Avenue before the parade, this is your chance. They'll be, they're on the 4th of July. It won't be 95 degrees, I promise. And I also wanted to mention this is a calendar, mark your calendars now, the township and the Anderson Senior Center, we're working on a health and wellness expo really geared toward our senior population, and that would be September 24th here in this building. We had a meeting about it today. It's going to be a nice event, and it's from 4 to 7 p.m. here. So you'll see a lot more things coming out before then, but if anyone's interested, and we're going to have some exhibitors and things like that, but
That's cool,
it's gonna be very cool, yeah.
Very nice.
Josh?
I'm good.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Fiscal officer, Brian, what do you have?
You'll see that 6A, the financial reports, I handed you an updated revenue status report. Your PDF is missing the last 3 pages of that. So you have the full revenue report there. The general fund is ahead of last year at this time for May. But if you look at all funds together, they are, it's 49.76 at the end of May, and then at this time last year, it was 49.86. So we're kind of right on pace for last year. These financials do include the payments that we sent to the schools for TIF. You know, we collected it in the prior month, and so we've sent the checks out, and so those are reflected in here. On 6B, that's also an update I gave you. So the fiscal office caught a then and now that needs to be added to the resolution. So the paper copy you have has the updated. It's the section 5. That's the additional one.
Thank you. I move to adopt the resolution authorizing payments.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
And then we also have the May 2nd meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from May 2nd, 2024.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Oh, sorry, I got distracted scrolling through this financial thing. Drives me crazy. Okay.
This very modern report.
Yes, this very modern report, yes, which maybe we're going to talk about sometime. Okay, Margaret.
Good evening. In your packet, you have a resolution that relates to the adoption of a revised investment policy for the township. I want to make sure that we distinguish when we're thinking about township investments between what's a legal permissible investment, and then, you know, of those legal investments, what investments are made based on some kind of financial analysis, which is beyond my pay grade. So what I'm addressing is the legal structure for permissible investments. So you last adopted an investment policy effective in 2016. Thereafter, and more recently, you all undertook an analysis of the investment policy and township investments with the firm of Red Tree Advisory. So one thing I want to make clear is that one of the conclusions of Red Tree was that you have a compliant investment policy. It does comply with the permissible investments under the Ohio Revised Code. One suggestion that they made was that you might revisit your investment policy and expand your list of permissible investments. So with that in mind, I was asked to do that, to take a look at the revisions to Chapter 135 of the code that deals with permissible investments and how public monies are handled. And so first of all, what were the amendments to the revised code? And secondly, broadening your investment policy to accommodate those investments if you want to make them. It doesn't mean you're going to make them, but it means that you have the opportunity to do so. So the first change that I want to, and I will say one more thing, as a preface, the several material changes in the act, well, really the one material change was to extend the maturity, or we call it duration, from 5 to 10 years of a potential investment. And that potential investment was within this category that requires additional training of the fiscal officer. So under the revised code, either the governing board or the fiscal officer can make investments. You all have previously delegated that to the fiscal office or fiscal officer. So if the fiscal officer completes certain additional training, supervised or required, provided by the Treasurer of State's office, then you may invest in these certain additional investments. So what we have done in the past, the prior fiscal officer did not wish to pursue these types of investments and had not undertaken the training required to do so, and therefore they were not included in your investment policy. One of the Red Tree discussion points had to do with the fact that you might want to, in the future, consider varying your portfolio a little bit more to have some investments that have a longer maturity. And so that brought into focus one of these categories that lets you go out 10 years, and that happens to fall within the additional training category. So I hope that isn't confusing to you, but with that in mind, there is this resolution, and it has attached to it the investment policy in a new form. It's revised only by including in the permissible sections, which is Article 5, these items that are laid out in subparagraph G. If you want to chat about them, we can, but basically you're broadening the authority for the fiscal officer because I understand he has undertaken the training.
So you
And
do
it
wanna
gives you more flexibility. Now, whether you want to do that, whether you make those investments or not, that's the subject of financial analysis, which Red Tree and the fiscal office perform. We're
Yeah.
just giving them the opportunity
Yeah.
if they choose, if they think that's the right course of action.
Yeah, our investments comply with the policy, but the code allows broader investments. So, Red Tree advised that we should at least have the option to broaden our portfolio. We're limited to mostly CDs. So we do run into the problem that we've already bought a CD from a bank, and with the FDIC insurance, we can't double up. So we can't get a CD from that bank again because then we won't have collateral. And so we have been having some trouble timing-wise getting, when one CD matures, then we have to put it, we want to put it in some other investment. The money market rates aren't terrible right now, but if we can put it in something that's 3, 4, 5 years maturity, then we can get a better rate, because the money market rates, the current CD rates are probably not going to stay where they are. So if we have some other options, like the treasury bills, municipal securities, so the training was municipal securities and then commercial paper. So those are what we're adding. And I did take those through the state treasurer.
I'd just make one more point. We've been in a bizarre interest rate market for the last, really it kind of started during the 2009 recession, but then COVID turned everything upside down. So the short-term rates, the short end of the curve things that mature more quickly have actually borne a higher interest rate than investments in paper that matures further out the curve. So we haven't done poorly with what we have. A lot of your money has been in Star Ohio, and that's near 5%, I think,
Right.
in interest payments.
Yeah.
So again, this was sort of a timely analysis, and who knows what the markets will do going forward, but you'll have the opportunity to go longer if you want to.
That's good.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
And the benefit of the current market is that the rates are really favorable, but that's also partly because all the expenditures are higher too. The inflation's up, so we're spending more, but we're making more. It's
Okay,
Makes sense.
thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we do have a resolution.
Yeah. I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the adoption of the Anderson Township investment policy and filing thereof with the auditor of the state of Ohio.
Second.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Girth,
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next, the sheriff's office.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm just presenting a request from Event Management Services to transfer a liquor license for 6295 Kellogg Avenue.
Really?
Yep. Address sound familiar? So,
It does.
Okay.
Do you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Move not to object to a liquor license transfer request for EVT Management Services LLC located at 6295 Kellogg Avenue, patio and deck.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Girth,
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, what are we back to?
Eric.
Public Works, Eric.
Hot dogs.
Hi, good evening. Tonight, Public Works is seeking authorization to purchase a new hot box. The board is aware that Public Works budgeted to purchase a new asphalt hot box using 94 TIF dollars. I am recommending that we purchase a KM 4000 2-ton asphalt hot box from Southeastern Equipment and Company Incorporated for the purchase price of $30,300. We have two pieces of equipment we're going to trade in. The first is less trade-in value is for $3,000. It's for a 2009 Simline 4-ton asphalt hot box, and the other is $1,000 for our 2002 Marathon hot box trailer. The result of the net purchase price with both of those trade-ins is $26,300. We've discussed this with the vehicle committee, and everybody is on board, and that is before you this evening for your consideration.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the purchase of a KM 4000 TED 2-ton asphalt hot box reclaimer diesel-fired hydraulic dump trailer. Sorry, with electric brakes for Public Works use and the disposition of a surplus Public Works motor vehicle pursuant to Section 505.10A3 as a trade-in against said purchase.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Girth,
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
we have a new hot box.
We do.
Yay. Okay, Vicki.
Yes, Mr. Severs has the first item.
Good evening. For a better part of a year, we've been working on the Operations Center design project. Before you have a proposal for the engineering for Phase 1, which is the northern portion of that site, and there's a motion before you for your consideration that allows us to proceed with that contract.
Move to authorize the Township Administrator to enter into a contract with MSA Design following review by the Law Director for design and engineering of the first phase of the Operations Center Master Plan as outlined in the proposed dated June 13th, 2024, utilizing 1994 TIF funds and in the 2024 budget or existing purchase orders from that fund in an amount not to exceed $531,500, including a 10% contingency of $55,150.
55 or 53?
53.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Girth,
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item we have is regarding service to our seniors, specifically those at the Anderson Senior Center and others. Since 2016, when the Board of Township Trustees took over management and operations of the Senior Center, we have contracted with Meals on Wheels. It was under a former name at that time, but it's Meals on Wheels of Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky. In addition to providing congregate meals and home-delivered meals for our residents, Meals on Wheels also provides transportation, taking residents who are homebound to and from doctor's appointments, to and from the grocery store, to and from the YMCA and other venues. They also, as I mentioned, deliver home-delivered meals to folks that need that service. And we have been paying, since 2016, the cost to the township has been $45,000. For the first time since 2016, they have asked that we increase the cost by $1,800 to $46,800 for those services, and I would recommend that the board authorize this agreement.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with Meals on Wheels of Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky.
Second.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Girth,
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes.
Thank you. Back to Mrs. Stone's comment about the cumbersome, difficult-to-read financial report that is produced by software that has been utilized by this township for the last 30-plus years. We would like to upgrade our software. Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Disk and Ms. Arnold and Mrs. Moxley, we have all reviewed this software provider. It will upgrade our existing accounting software. It will provide financial reports that are easily read. It will provide managers with better tools to manage their budgets. Not that they're not doing an excellent job now, but it provides additional tools. It will be a time saver for us as far as the reports that are automated, monthly reports to the board or ad hoc reports that you would like to see. So we are recommending that the board authorize an agreement with Software Solutions so that we can start the process of transitioning. This will take about a year before we are fully transferred if the board authorizes this.
I will, as soon as I find it.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the execution of a framework services, support, and license agreement with Software Solutions Incorporated.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Girth,
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes.
Thank you. There is one item arising from executive session discussion, and there is a motion before you.
I'd move to authorize the township administrator to hire Eli Davies as a planner one in the Planning and Zoning Department effective 2024 at a starting pay rate of $24.50 an hour and all other benefits normally offered with full-time employment.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all we have this evening.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Our next full board meeting will be July 18th in this room, 5 p.m. Well, executive session.
Did we have one other item coming out of executive session?
Did we?
We had 2 personnel items?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Together we are better.
Thank
Thank you. We were like, it's in.
Yes, we did have another item.
That's
Is there
right.
a resolution, though?
You have a
Where-
motion. You should have a motion.
We don't, though. That's the thing. I think that's why we have the one for Eli. Is it on the,
Yeah, it's in,
Is it in the
behind
beginning
your
of the
exec
packet?
session section.
it's in the very beginning. Here,
Oh, okay.
we got it.
Okay, yeah.
I move to authorize an increase to the hourly pay rate of Steven Springsteen from $25.83 per hour to $26.50, retroactive to June 1st, 2024, for the successful completion of his one-year probationary period as a planner one.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, so July 18th, but we will probably be having a special session in there, and there'll be a notice put out, special meeting in there. So, and with that, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Mrs. Boston?
Yes.
Mr. Gurra?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.